My name's Chris Shaw, I work for a company called Urban Splash. As Jamie mentioned, we've delivered or designed a concept called Townhouse and House. What I'd like to take you through today is sort of the origins of that and how we've designed it for Offsite. Firstly, a little bit of brief history about Urban Splash. So originally we were a regeneration developer, not really in the modular space. We delivered over 4,000 new homes over the course of our 25-year history. And basically we've been around for a while, but more famous for regeneration of mills and that sort of thing. And basically roll on to 2016 and we sort of had our big idea, and where this was driven from was we were seeing a lot of our 30-something-year-old residents moving out of our new build apartment schemes and moving into Victorian, Georgian terraces, suburbs, and basically we started looking at what was it about those particular products that demographic was going for. And actually we found that what they were really going for was good floor-to-ceiling heights, large bay windows, open plan living, so basically low-bearing walls on the outside of the property so that they could knock them through, put modern kitchens, modern bathrooms in there. So without necessarily looking into the modular space, we came up with a design-led house, and that was where we first started. We then went out to the market, started procuring in various different ways, and basically ended up down the volumetric route, and that's where we land here today. So one of the other things we started looking at was are modern homes and new homes meeting people's needs, and if not, why not? And basically the current housing market is very much a much of a muchness. The industry has stagnated, so we've built homes in the same way for 150 years plus. My opinion, poor quality design, although house builders are very good at one aspect of design, which is the maximum number of bedrooms in the minimal amount of space. Cellular layouts, so very often not open plan living, and basically no choice. So we created House, and not only did we want to change what a house looks like or could be, we also wanted to change the way that you would purchase a house as well. And this is all leading into why we went down the modular route. So we start with a question, and just before I do that as well, one interesting fact is that when you buy a house, you buy it on 3 metrics roughly in the UK market. Price is already fixed. Your location is generally already fixed, you know where you want to live. And then the third metric is always number of bedrooms. And it's just, if you go on the continent, people they'll easily know, and the vast majority of them know the square meterage of their house. Hands up who knows the square meterage of their house. That's more than usual, but I've got the right crowd. So the first thing that we started doing was changing the way in which you buy a house. So the first thing is we say, how much space do you want? So 1,000 square feet or 1,500 square feet. Once you've then selected that, we ask you, are you a garden liver or are you a loft liver? And what do I mean by that? Loft livers have the kitchen on the top floor, garden livers have the kitchen on the ground floor. Once you've gone down each of those individual routes, we then give you, and it's a bit hard to see here, but I can share these slides afterwards, but you have 3 different options on each floor plate. You can pick from any 3 option on any floor plate. What that does is that gives you 72 different combinations of house within a 3-story house. Now what's interesting is that means that every single purchaser that comes in bespokely designs their house. Now the reason that we can do this is modularization and volumetric build. So if I just sort of explain that, it doesn't matter whether or not we've got an S4, an F11 or a G10 going down our line and in what order, we can then combine them in any sort of myriad of different options and layouts. So around 4 years ago, we were working with a company called Intershell. They were actually acquired by SIG Offsite. And then 12 months ago, we actually acquired SIG Offsite. Now, we are a bit unusual in most developers because we actually own the land buying, the development arm of the company. We actually own Urban Splash Construct, which is a construction arm of the company. And now we own Urban Splash Modular, which is the modularization or modular production of the company. So we actually own the entire supply chain. Currently, we only deliver for ourselves, but what that does allow us to do is design from the very outset to be modular. So traditional construction. So everybody's seen this. Everybody's sort of affair with the feudal labour system of traditional construction. And what I often get is people say, "Oh, why would I want to buy a house that's built in a factory?" But what I'd say to that is, why would you buy a car that was built in a field? Probably not. And this was just to check that you are actually all awake. But basically, that is the construction industry as we know it. And I'll flick past that. So, the industrialisation of construction. And people often think when they come to our factory they're going to see all this robotics and all of this. And actually, we're not necessarily there yet, but nor do we want to be. What's interesting is if you go around the Jaguar Land Rover factory, the front end of the production facility is very automated, but actually once you get into the customization element, a lot of it is still hand, it's people, it's just sheer amount of volume and tack time. But it's interesting that other industries have industrialised over the last 150 or 50 years, and basically construction is the last industry that hasn't changed, and we think that that is going to change over the coming years. We went down a volumetric route, so we basically build boxes. And one of the issues with build boxes is that every time you transport a pod, you transport fresh air. So in order to make this pay and to make it viable, we have to basically get the units inside as close to completion as possible. Now that means that we want to be doing as much work in the factory as possible. That comes with some constant challenge, so we're constantly testing ourselves about what should be done in the factory, what should be done on site, and finding the absolute sweet spot. We're very much focused on assembly rather than construction, so trying to get the entire factory into a position where we're just assembling bits of kit rather than necessarily using high-skilled labour, basically using the construction methods of old. At the moment, we actually make our own timber cassettes and panel manufacture, so we do this ourselves, and that's where we use these to create the pods. We actually, at the moment, have our own bathroom pod line, so we create our own bathroom pods. That is something that we're looking at whether or not in the future that makes sense to outsource, to insource. And again, that's where we're constantly testing ourselves about whether or not we should be buying or making. The units are delivered to site fully cladded like this, although we're looking at changing that as well and testing that and seeing which is the best route. But here you can see one of the roof pods arriving, and we can erect a 3-storey townhouse in roughly a day. So that's a little bit about the product itself, but also what we're interested in as a regeneration developer is the space in between. And what do I mean by that? And that is, we want to look at how can we create better places to live. And this is where our modular element of our company and our traditional regen side of the company can work hand in hand. Because one of the sort of the criticisms of modular is the monotony that it can create, and actually that's where we can come up with clever scenarios and sort of different typology plans to basically create a street, a crescent, and a square. And we've actually tested the street, the crescent, and the square now on 3 of different of our schemes. We're also looking at the modulation of what we can do outside of the property as well. So actually, we've got different external factors that we can modularize and create different pattern books, and then to create varied interest and also deal with different site boundary contentions. We're coming up with different ways, so we can look at the internal layout. So this is a very typical sort of, everybody has their own individual garden. We're actually looking at something different on IPL, so trying to, in one sense, increase the density, but also trying to create different places, better places to live. So rather than having 52 different bin stores and all individual gardens, we're creating communal gardens where we can share the bin store spaces and actually create a really nice place to live, each with an individual area for each resident. However, then you've got this shared garden in between. Very much going back to what Georgian, a lot of Georgian architecture that played on these styles. So these are just some of our completed schemes. So this is New Islington in Manchester. This is North Shields in Newcastle, just outside Newcastle. And again, when people see our products, they often say, "Oh, it's very modern," but actually, it's just a modern take on a classic Georgian townhouse. And then we give that customization internally. This is Irwell Riverside. So this is a scheme that was completed, and we've delivered roughly just shy of around 200 homes now over the past couple of years. So we think, we're one of the leading regeneration developers in the modular space on low-rise domestic. And again, these are just some more shots from Irwell Riverside. And I think this was quite interesting. So this is actually a resident from New Islington, and I've met this guy several times, and he was genuinely, he said he was proud to own one of these buildings, and I think it's something that is sort of indoctrinated in all the Urban Splash sort of employees, that basically, we want to leave a positive mark on the world. And actually, it's not just about creating units and volume, and it's actually, we create spaces and people's homes. So I think having that in the forefront of your mind, you won't go too far wrong.